Sakegesprek met Theo Vorster in collaboration with Momentum Investments. Ferdi, welcome.
Hello Theo, it is fantastic to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
If you look at the current investment landscape, what are the big themes that investors should focus on?
Theo, we live in a world of change, as we all know. So there are four themes that I think are probably worthwhile to reference here. The first one is the changes in the macroeconomic world. So, and all of those depends, of course, on or are initiated by social changes, by micro and macroeconomic factors, but also the geopolitical world, and specifically because of the ongoing wars in the Ukraine and also the Middle East, and that brings uncertainty. Secondly is the technology almost revolution in which I think we are, and it is the culmination of the developments in artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, digitization, and of course all of this have an impact on how behavior science can evolve, and that will have an impact on how we need to think about investments. It needs to impact on how we do business, but it will definitely impact also on how individual investors want to engage with us as a provider of funds and so forth. The third one relates to climate and climate change, and that has been around for a long time already, but actually the pressure becomes higher as we move closer to 2035 and 2050. And the fourth one is something that's very close to, I guess, all our hearts also, because it relates to inflation and interest rates and what it meant for people's cost of living. And that's not only a South African phenomenon, it's also in the UK and many other places where people find it tough to live their daily lives. And what does that mean? Well, it means that people have less discretionary funds to invest and to save, and that will have a longer term impact.
Ferdi, a theme that we hear a lot of, ESG, environmental, social, governance, is a topic that is banded around quite extensively. From your perspective, from Momentum Investments perspective, what's your view on the responsibility that it creates?
Yes, Theo, you're right. I think responsible investments are high up on our agenda and high up in the world, of course, as I just mentioned in one of the core themes that we need to be aware of. As an investor and an asset allocator, we are getting increasing pressure from governments, from regulators, and from corporate clients as we get closer to targets that they need to meet and that they expect us to help them achieve. But we're also aware from a South African perspective, in fact from an emerging markets perspective, that the social impact of enforced short-term changes can have a massive impact on people's employment, especially in countries like ourselves where there is a high unemployment number. And so we need to balance that out with a social impact, and I think for us in Momentum Investments, therefore we do follow an integrated investments philosophy in terms of responsibility and sustainability, and that simply means that we balance out all of the ESG factors together with all the financials and the corporate responsibility requirements in order for us to be able to facilitate change both in companies, but also make sure that the workforce can be retrained and redeployed in time. So at Momentum, we are active investors, and so we get involved with the companies in which we invest to make sure that they change adequately and appropriately and timely. But at the same time, we look for opportunities in the new green economy, if you want. And so we've identified things like the Karasuk solar farm in the Northern Cape, and also there's a wind farm in Hopetown that we're investing in. And those infrastructure projects are quite key because it sets us up for the future, especially also with our own electricity challenges in South Africa, but it builds a new economy for the future. And so if we have a focus, then we would say our focus really is to facilitate and to be part of the change, but we need to live it as a business, and we need to show it in our portfolios that we manage.
Ferdi, you live both in the UK and in South Africa. You have vast international experience. Your advice regarding international diversification?
Yes, Theo, firstly, I think the world has become an open marketplace from an investment perspective, and from a South African perspective also, it's probably the easiest that it's ever been to invest offshore. But maybe the first point is diversification is critical, I think, for long-term investment outcomes. And so whether we do that in a local domestic fund environment, there's enough diversification opportunities there. But if you think about the JSE, whilst it is the largest stock exchange in Africa, it is only 1% of the global market capitalization. And so there's a vast amount of opportunities out in the global world. And so if you want to diversify adequately and responsibly, then I would argue that you do need to have access to those companies and those regions and those different market environments actually to balance out the risks in a portfolio. It also applies to currencies and getting currency exposure and maybe act as a rand hedge. But the most important is also, of course, to remember that every individual is different, and so advice is very important when considering what the options are and whether diversification in a global context help, or whether currency exposure helps and so forth, or whether that's too risky for an individual. And at Momentum we have various fund platforms through which you can access various types of portfolios, and definitely also global portfolios, both in our local domestic Momentum Wealth platform, but also the Momentum Wealth International platform. But there are many platforms like that through which investors can access all the opportunities that they need.
Ferdi, if you were to highlight certain elements that investors should focus on for success, what will those be?
Theo, there are many factors that will impact on the successful outcome of an investment strategy. The main one, I guess, is the discipline of an investor over time. But if there's three elements that I need to lift out, then the first one would be the need for advice. Having a proper long-term plan and sticking with a plan is critical, but also then that must be based on sound advice. And I think too often, we all follow Google medical advice, so we follow, our own Google advisor in the financial context. And it's good for information gathering, but actually to sit down with somebody that's a professional, that's qualified, that can guide you through the process is critical, and I think it sets you up for a higher probability of success. The second one has to do with time. I think people underestimate the value of time in good investment outcome, and that has two components to it. The first one is start early. I think we've got too many young people who do not start to invest early enough, and I think the earlier you start in a professional career to invest, the better. The second point to this factor is that you need to stay invested over time. And that's human behavior. I think lots of our personalities are such that when markets move in a particular way, we withdraw our money at the wrong time and we reinvest it at the wrong time. And there's a behavior tax attached to that. It has a permanent impact on capital over time. And the last one is diversification, right? So, as I said earlier, I think a diversified portfolio will give you a far better chance of a good outcome versus all eggs in one basket.
Ferdi, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sakegesprek met Theo Vorster in collaboration with Momentum Investments.